Yeah, Queenstown Lakes District is performing pretty well. You know, the average price point for the area is 1.3. The national average is circa 780, I think, Auckland 1 mil. So we're definitely ahead of the curve around the country. And volume of sales, you know, we've got 29 offices around the country. This area is performing pretty well, just back to sort of normal consistency. It's not 2021. It's not going crazy, but it's definitely picking up, particularly in the last 6 weeks, 8 weeks with the OCR drops and interest rates, you know, coming down.
Welcome to Checks and Balances, brought to you by Partners Life. I'm Michael Vincent. This is James Blair. And today we've got an extra special guest, Mark Harris, Managing Director of New Zealand Sotheby's International Realty.
We are back in your life and we are not back at the office.
No.
Mike, somehow we ended up in Queenstown.
I know, at an absolutely stunning property. Mark, thank you for having us.
Oh, well, yeah, thank you for having me.
We're going to do a 2-part series with you, Mark, and this is quite an interesting one. So we're going to do one, which is going to be another episode all about you. So we're going to go deep. I hope you enjoy that. This one's though all about the Queenstown market, but we should probably start with this beautiful home we're sitting in.
Yeah, it's a nice one, isn't it? Unfortunately, it's a little wet outside today, but yeah, it's a special property. It's in an area called Bendemeer, which is about 10, 15 minutes from the middle of Queenstown, 5 minutes to Arrowtown. So yeah, it's in a special spot, surrounded by golf courses and wineries, and you know, view straight up to Coronet Peak. So it's pretty nice.
Yeah, we were saying as we were driving in, like we might have to get some other footage because the view is absolutely stunning, and you know, as with anything, Murphy's Law, we came down and the rain settled in.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about the setup in this area. We're kind of would you describe it as a gated community, or how would you?
Yeah, you would. It's a gated estate, gated community, and it was established early 2000s.
Yeah.
And you know, sites started selling here back in the day for around 2 mil, which is quite a bit back then. And it's just, you know, it's established itself since then. And there are about 30 lots in here, and you know, as I said, located really, you know, ideally next to all the amenities that, you know, a lot of people like, the golf courses, etc., and Arrowtown, the restaurants. So yeah, it's private and exclusive, and you know, a mix of full-time residents and holiday homeowners in here, and you know, it's a special place.
Yeah. And what's this? Just kind of this properties like this. What's the split between those who, I guess, are Kiwis and living in the homes versus those that are international buyers and just kind of pop here from time to time, and it's part of quite a large portfolio? They're worth a lot of money.
Yeah, there's a real mix in here. So there's Kiwi residents in here. Probably the majority would be Kiwis. And these vendors are actually Australian, but they live in Queenstown at Bendemeer. One of the issues with this property is it is restricted by the OIO rules. So it does control who can buy in here and who can't. So effectively, unless you're living in New Zealand, you're not able to purchase in here because of the OI rule settings, is, you know, the way they are at the moment. So a mixture of residents and non-residents.
And that's the Overseas Investment Act?
It is, yeah.
Which places some restrictions on who can buy what and for what purpose. Yeah, so some of our overseas clients do run into that a little bit. But you know, we try and work a way around it.
Yeah, and you're saying that with other communities not that far away, there's different rules.
Yeah, there are examples of other communities. Waiuna is one down by Glenorchy there next to Blanket Bay, where they got an exemption at the time of development there, and so that international purchasers are able to buy in there as long as the property isn't over 5 hectares, and with the current rules, as long as they're Australian and Singaporean.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's still restrictive, but when these rules loosen up, hopefully they will, in the next year or two. It'll allow more foreigners to buy down there as long as they're under that 5 hectare threshold rule, which I don't think will change that sensitive land rule.
Yeah, nice. And we're sitting in this amazing house with an amazing view behind us, which you can't quite see today. What are sort of the price points for properties in this development or kind of around here?
This one's on the market for 8 million plus,
Yep.
and we've sold property in here for 12 and for 18. So it's a popular area and around
kind of that first home buyer market.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Pull the Kiwi saver out, do a 5% deposit.
You can do a co-ownership thing.
Yeah.
Kiwi Bank's good at that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's certainly not the first home buyer part of the market in Queenstown, but it's an exclusive gated community, so you would expect those sort of prices.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, and what's the market like at this end of town at the moment?
Yeah,
Are,
that
are
price
properties
point, yeah.
properties selling quickly?
Yeah.
Obviously, other parts of New Zealand are, don't know if you know this, Mark. Interest rates are pretty high. Other parts are struggling. What's it like here?
Yeah, Queenstown Lakes District is performing pretty well. The average price point for the area is 1.3. The national average is circa 780, I think, Auckland 1 mil. So we're definitely ahead of the curve around the country. And volume of sales, we've got 29 offices around the country. This area is performing pretty well, just back to sort of normal consistency. It's not 2021. It's not going crazy, but it's definitely picking up, particularly in the last 6 weeks, 8 weeks with the OCR drops and interest rates, coming down.
You almost don't want 2021 though.
Mm.
Like, don't get me wrong, it's great for sellers and the market, but that level of price increase and that kind of frenetic, focus on house buying, it's not sustainable over the long term, and like, when we look at that, we never model our numbers off that sort of thing for our financial projections.
It's fun when you do though. You end up with like
amazing.
E to the power of on the projection number.
Yeah. The calculator's broken, James. Yeah. And then, so Queenstown's bucked the trend a little bit in terms over the last kind of 18 months for house price growth. The rest of the country, some places we're back 20%. Not so in Queenstown. Why do you think that is, that it's kind of just seemed to slowly, steadily keep going up?
I think the area just becomes more and more popular as more people discover it, and that's people from around New Zealand and around Australia, etc. And just the lifestyle attributes is normally what drives the demand. Because people can work here, but also enjoy all the lifestyle that's on hand. You've got a ski resort, 2 ski resorts within 15, 20 minutes, and 2 or 3 really high class golf courses, vineyards. And one of the other things I think is really important for us is the airport. It's so accessible, on a daily basis from East Coast Aussie or Auckland. You guys are driven here, you're up at the house in 20 minutes from the airport, and it's pretty unique like that. So big driver for it, and just the beauty of the place.
I'm sure a lot of people do what in a previous life, I used to look after a team of financial advisors and come down to Queenstown quite a bit. And you get off the plane, you go, a little book of high-end clients down here. It's a pretty good life. Look around here every day. Be a pretty good life to live. Mm. How did you end up in, because you're not originally, and we'll get into your backstory a little bit later, but how did you end up in Queenstown?
Yeah, well, I've been here 20 years. So 2003, on a 1-year mission to open a real estate business, and came over here and I guess fell in love with it. Just all the things we talked about, that lifestyle and accessibility, and, the business started to go well, and I met a lovely Kiwi lady, and, the rest is history. So it was, like for a lot of Queenstowners, meant to be a 1-year mission, and it's turned into 20. So.
Yeah. The one thing we were talking about on the car ride in was, I guess, whether Queenstown is now a town, or is it moving towards being a city? What are your thoughts in terms of, I don't know, Queenstown's role in New Zealand, but it definitely feels like it, you compare it to other areas, and it's having like a pretty big impact on New Zealand, isn't it? Mm.
I think it is. The headline yesterday, they're calling it Queen City now. The population now hitting 30,000, and forecast to be the second biggest city in the South Island, and not too distant future. So it is. It plays an important part on the landscape of New Zealand tourism. Obviously, it's the jewel in the crown, isn't it, for New Zealand tourism? And it's it's important that it continues to be that. I think, because it drives business into itself, but then that goes further around the country. So it's.
And as an advertisement, got that out, on a global stage, it's not a bad one to have out there,
No, there's plenty of, fantastic visuals, aren't there? And, Aussies, I've got 5 mates flying over tonight from Sydney, and they just love it. They're just super excited to be here. And every time you see these internationals coming, particularly for the first time, they just, they fall in love with it.
Yeah. And then, so if we're kind of shifting the lens a little bit towards, reasons to be in Queenstown in terms of property investment, it has continued to track really well. How do you see the future over kind of the short to medium term? And if people are thinking about, where should I invest in New Zealand, is Queenstown, a realistic, viable option for them, or is it kind of a bit more, an owner-occupied play, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's not going to slow down, put it that way. I just think it's going to continue to be a popular place to live and raise a family, and there's schools popping up and more infrastructure, and becomes more cosmopolitan all the time with restaurants and things to do, which is great. And we've talked about $8 million price brackets and 10 and 12 and beyond, but there's plenty of sales in the 1 to 2. We've done plenty of those lately. It's that investment market, first home buyer market is coming back pretty strong. And there are plenty of opportunities in that range, 1.5 to 2.5 around the valley here, and the rental yields aren't bad either. So because it's in demand, not just for buying, but also as a place to come and rent and work and live.
Before we move on, we talk all the time about planning and growing our wealth, but protecting that wealth is just as important. That's why having the right insurance in place can help when life goes unexpectedly.
And that's why this episode is brought to you by Partners Life, a New Zealand operated award-winning insurance provider with over 300,000 Kiwis insured and 89% of claims paid.
Partners Life understand that having some insurance is better than having no insurance. They have flexible and personalized solutions for any budget or situation.
Check out their website in our show notes below.
What about on the development side in terms of more people wanting to come here? New Zealand's very bad at building houses and keeping up with the demand. What's the supply side looking like?
Supply side's pretty strong. Yeah, there's plenty of consents in for more homes. Ladies Mile on the other side of Jack's Point, more homes being developed and applications in, and then in town the huge Lakeview project, which we've actually which we're marketing at the moment. That's the 200 or 300 apartments there right in the centre of town. So there is supply on the way, which is good. We need supply. We need housing. We need somewhere for people to live and work. And fill up these restaurants and employees, etc. So it's important.
Yeah. Coming back to what the rest of New Zealand has done compared to Queenstown. So I was looking at some numbers before recording, and pretty much at the top of the market, the average Queenstown house was I think around like 1.6, and I think it's sitting around 1.8 today. Fundamentally, unless because I just don't know what percentage are those like kind of big overseas buyers, but if you're running businesses or you're an employee or whatever you're doing, you're still high interest rates still impact you. What is different about Queenstown compared to like Auckland and Wellington in particular that's dropped as much as it's dropped?
I just think the demand is high. It's just a demand and supply thing. And I just think that there's still a movement out of the cities. We're seeing plenty of Aucklanders and Wellingtonians wanting to come and live here and raise family here. And I think it's just demand driven, and, the higher the demand, the higher the price.
Yeah. And it's because I look at the population, I was actually surprised by the 30, because I've just seen how many houses. And I know it's very much skewed by the number of people in terms of tourists being here and people coming and visiting. But I was still surprised that the population wasn't bigger, because 30,000, you compare it to, like I was thinking whether Queenstown is a city or not, and compare it to, I think Hamilton's got like 180,000 people.
But even if you think about, like Hamilton is, Queenstown compared to Hamilton, Hamilton has been a much bigger city for a much longer period of time. Yeah, if I looked at the growth opportunity though, Hamilton, no disrespect to Hamilton or anyone living in Hamilton.
Here we go.
Hamilton's major growth opportunity is that it's close to Auckland.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. Don't get me wrong. There's farms and that around there, but whereas you look at Queenstown, you go, the growth opportunity here is the lifestyle, and compared to Auckland, I would say the price point. Yeah.
And I think it's also unique in that it's driven by an international market. 10% of our buyers are Aussie, and I think that's only going to continue to grow. And so it's a little unique in that respect, that it's, in some ways you could call it a suburb of Auckland and almost a suburb of Sydney in a way. I mean, it transacts within itself. People move from Jack's Point to Kelvin Heights, etc. But there's no doubt there's an influence from offshore and around New Zealand, and they're comparing apples with apples price wise.
Yeah, and I guess if you're looking at some of the overseas markets and buying in New Zealand, no capital gains tax really. It's not too hard to buy a house here, all things considered. It would be fascinating to see the stats on who's moving where in the country, like of the immigration population coming in. You go, I guess what is the average wealth of someone moving into Queenstown versus someone going anywhere else in the country, and the impact that has on, I guess, the spending in the community.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, tourism's a very big part of the Queenstown economy. As more people come here, I'm guessing it slowly diversifies in terms of the workforce and the opportunities. Are there any trends you're seeing in terms of businesses that are kind of, in industries that are becoming bigger in Queenstown?
Yeah, well, there's a push to turn it into a bit of a tech hub, and obviously through COVID, people got used to working from home and not needing to go into an office. And, I definitely think there's still that trend of, well, if I can, work from my laptop, then why wouldn't I do it somewhere like Queenstown or, lifestyle orientated? And, so I think that continues. I think the Americans call it zip code shift, and I think that Queenstown's, orientated that way. And, it'd be great to diversify outside of tourism. And if we can give some incentive towards, creating a tech hub in Queenstown, I'm all for it. I think, COVID obviously exposed tourism as a, obviously as an important ingredient, but when it's not there, it's, what else do we have? So
you almost get that Dutch disease.
Yeah.
You suffer from one industry being the entire place, and when that disappears,
I was just thinking about the zip code shift, and then the fact that now it's going back the other way, where like Amazon and then the government and everyone's been like, all right, everybody back 5 days a week, and people are like, I've moved. I'm actually not in the city anymore. I think that's a really interesting point in terms of diversifying away from tourism. Like, certainly when COVID hit, if there was an argument to be had, if you guys don't have tourism, you are screwed and house prices are going to fall off a cliff. That didn't happen, like, proportionately more to like lots of other, obviously then interest rates dropped and everything went crazy. But that period of time where it was like, what's going to happen? Why do you think when there was no tourists, Queenstown house prices didn't drop by more?
Well, it was really surprising because, we, at that time, we were like, wow, our business is going to end up back in the garage again.
Yeah.
And I think we had sort of 3 or 4 levels of DEFCON, we were heading down the ladder of, jeepers, what have we got on our hands here? But it lasted about 6 weeks, didn't it? When there was just basically you physically couldn't go into a house. We had contracts that we couldn't fulfill because people couldn't inspect homes. And so it just parked up terribly. It was sort of panic stations. And then it just gradually started to shift as we could get back out amongst the properties and, people could fly in. And even though we were distancing with elbows and all the rest of it, it was pretty weird, wasn't it? But it just started to take off and it just went crazy from about July 2020 through 2021. And I think it was just a strange psychological effect that COVID had where people just thought, gee, if this happens again, I want to be somewhere where I can have space and, in a sanctuary and, and it just, it was quite remarkable.
What was it like? During that time, especially at the start with a lot of the unknown, you're running a business, you've got employees, it's very much tight. It must have been bloody stressful at the start going, what's going to happen?
Yeah, it was. And then obviously we had to, live by all the rules around vaccination. So we had, people that were vaccinated and people that weren't. And there were rules around, coming into the office if you weren't. So we had to apply that rule, obviously. And that was, not pleasing to everyone. And so, it was really tricky and just the uncertainty of it. But, I guess, the rules were pretty forced, and hard and fast, and whether that was the right thing to do or not, retrospectively, who knows? But we came out of it pretty quick, and here we are today. We've gone through 3 or 4 years of pain, but finally we're at the start. I think really of a new positive cycle now. So we've come through it, thankfully.
Yeah, awesome. And so, what are your thoughts on next couple of years for the Queenstown property market? If you can get out that magic ball, what's going to happen?
Magic ball,
50% increase year on year.
I think steady growth. I think like you said, we don't want to have another 2021 where it jumps dramatically and then it comes down again dramatically. Just nice consistent growth, sustained growth. 5% next year. I think ANZ's saying 4.5%, 5%. I'd be a buyer at that probably, and then 2026. 6-7% maybe, if the foreign buyer rule opens up, maybe slightly more, but just nice consistent growth is what we're after, I think, and hopefully we're at that point.
Yeah, I actually think the opposite. So I've said this before in another episode, and I stick to my statement, is I think we're in for 10% next year, and then it tapers back. Because there are a lot of people who've been sitting on the sidelines, waiting to do something, waiting for just a little bit more stability around the job, the interest rates, just the consumer confidence level. So I'm actually picking the opposite. I reckon 10% next year, and then we come back a little bit.
Yeah, I do worry about it's just not good. The volatile, it's really good, and then there's no free lunches, and it becomes quite crappy off the back of it. I do worry about the lack of houses across a country that we're building. And then the thing that is just pretty much impossible to measure is the amount of people who have gone, it's not a good market, I'm going to wait.
Yeah.
And you can only wait so long. And there's people who want to downsize, move into retirement villages, people who want to sell their businesses, people who want to buy businesses. The ripple impact of a few years is going to be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sort of lag effect of all the psychological kind of lag effect of COVID in the last 3 years. People are a little gun shy.
Yeah.
But I think I would just say to people, now's the time. If you're thinking about buying, I just think 6 months, 12 months from now, it's going to be a different ballpark, and they should get amongst it now. So.
Yeah,
I completely agree.
You might want to sit on the fence on this one, and if you do want to sit on the picket fence, that's completely fine to me. I don't let Mike sit there, but you can put yourself up there. The foreign buyers rules. Any thoughts?
I just think it's really important for New Zealand that we're not seen to be closed for business.
Yeah.
I just think the country needs investment. We need productivity, and allowing foreigners in here more easily to invest is super important at the moment. Leaving the real estate side of it, put that to the side. I just think the economy needs it, and Winston obviously announced his $100 billion fund a couple of weeks ago. So, I think this is great. And if it's a precursor to a residential rule change, then good. It may have a hurdle, $3-4 million fine, and a tax applied to it, stamp duty or land tax. Good.
Yeah.
But we need these guys here coming and investing in New Zealand, because when they come here and they enjoy the place, they also want to invest into the businesses in the community, and that just produces jobs and productivity.
Yeah.
So
because I'm guessing you are having those conversations with those foreign. And what is the perception of New Zealand like at the moment? Because obviously we're in a bubble. We think whatever we think about ourselves, but from the outside looking in, what are you hearing?
Well, we're dealing with several high net worth, particularly American billionaires at the moment, and it's too complicated. A couple of them been through the 183 visa rule, where they come out here and they have to stay here for 183 days, and then they can become a resident, a tax resident, that is, and they get to 160 days and have to go back to the US for whatever reason, and then it stops, so they have to start again.
Yeah,
and it's just crazy. So they just go, this is too hard.
Yeah.
And then they start looking at places like Australia or Canada or wherever, and they go there. So I mean, it's such a shame, because these are great people who want to participate in the community and and bring their money here and their IP here, and they just it's too hard.
Yeah, James and I are both really back New Zealand, and we want New Zealand to be like a great place to do business, and that ease of transaction just cannot be stressed at how important that is for people picking place to like you say, make investments, share the IP, and bring some good times.
Totally, yeah. And I think also it assists with supply, because developers go, well, we can sell to foreigners, even if there is a hurdle, then it makes them more confident about developing, and that's what we want. So,
and
hopefully we're getting
watching going, no, that's not the way to do it. At the moment, the government is now propping up developers. So, if you sub one out for someone else, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world.
Hey, Mark, obviously we're sitting in this beautiful house. If somebody has a spare $8 million in their back pocket, how do they get hold of you?
Well, they can get hold of us via the website, or they can call me directly if they would like to. I'm not the agent selling it, but I'll happily refer you
take the call.
onto our agents, Ross Rodell and Matt Finnegan.
Mark, thank you very much. I'm really looking forward to the next episode we do, where we talk all about you. So get ready. The only way you're going to see that episode, if you subscribe to the channel, give us a review, give us a like. Much love to Partners Life for sponsoring this episode, and we'll catch you next time.